All right, back and welcome back to the channel. So this is the cylinder head. We had cylinder 1 and 3. You can see here the dark marks. Zoom up a little. That's exactly where it lifted the gasket, there and there. So yeah, we're gonna check the block straightness. I got the machinist straight edge. We're gonna check the heads out. If everything looks good, we'll clean it up. Got the new head studs. Let's see, come over here. We got the ARP 625s in here. We got new gaskets, fuel pump. We're gonna try to upgrade that too. Same time. Got a larger turbo. Got the Blouch 3.5 XTR. We're gonna try to drop that on and get this back together. And we're down to 3 weekends. This weekend was a little lazy yesterday. Today's Sunday. I'm going to be out here for a few hours, probably throughout the night, and try to get this long block all assembled and ready to go back in the car. So I'm going to walk you step by step on checking the heads for any warpage, check for the block for any warpage. Have to clean up the surface areas and whatnot, and I'll just check them out and we'll be right back. Alright, so I got the block cleaned up. You can see the surface area. Just basically took off all the gasket material, made it nice and polished. I like to sand the surface of the block with something like around maybe like 200 to 400 grit. I got a flat sanding block and just go over the whole surface, make sure it's nice and smooth, everything looks good. I got the machine edge on it. I turned the lights off in here, so this will try to help, but I mean, you can see just by even having the light behind it, you don't really see anything popping up from the cylinder bore to the sides. Everything looks flat. Obviously, you want to double check. We can go one step further. Let me turn the lights back on. So I got the filler gauge. We're at 2 thousandths on this filler gauge, and it doesn't even attempt to go underneath. So we can check it cross pattern. That's what I like to do on each cylinder. The head stud all the way across. It's good there. Then check it the opposite direction from stud to stud. Let's bring it around. We're good. Nothing, not even an attempt to get the filler gauge. We could check across the cylinders and the head stud where it did lift at, just to be extra certain. And we don't have any attempt of this filler gauge to go in. So this block is still flat. Good thing we caught that as soon as I saw a little bit of coolant, not a lot pushed out, just a little bit. That was enough for me to go ahead and stop driving the car. And I mean, I started it up to run it, but to stay out of full boost until we could address this issue. So block is looking flat. I'm going to go ahead and get one of the heads, flip it over, clean it all up, the surface area, and we'll go ahead and check the head next. All right, we got head number 1 here. I went ahead and did a quick sand across. I use a flat sander like that. Like I said, anything between usually like a 200 and then into a 400 grit. But head looks pretty good. I got the straight edge on there. As you can see, no light or anything coming from behind it. And normally I've seen them where you can definitely see just with the naked eye, and light is usually a pretty good indication. But just to be on the safe side, we got our filler gauge here, 2 thousandths, and just trying to put it through. They don't even attempt to go through anywhere across. And I'll check it like this, then do once again across the head here, check for the center, and then I also already checked across the cylinder down there where the head did actually lift here on the side of the cylinders, but we're flat all the way around. I don't see any issues with these heads. Like I said, it did lift a little, but I immediately stopped boosting on it. Drove it home, took it for some drives, and no coolant was getting pushed at all until I got in a boost. So pretty sure the heads are perfectly fine. We'll check that second one over there, but we're gonna go ahead and get this head back on this side. Since we know the head and the block are flat, I'm pretty sure this is the one that lifted. This would be my biggest concern, but looks like we're good to go. So I'm gonna start getting this back together, and we'll have a long block in a few minutes and start getting the accessories bolted on and start putting some little bit of upgrades in here. So I figured I'd just show a close-up, since I've never seen anyone actually put them side by side, but this is the ARP 2000 bolts, or stud I should say. This is a 625. It's obviously a lot stronger, almost triple the price of a 2000. The washers and the nuts look to be exactly the same as the 2000, but the material used on the 625 stud is able to hold the head down, a lot more cylinder pressure, more clamping force than the 2000. So obviously I'm sure my timing was a little aggressive, and I was running a decent amount of boost on the engine with not the largest turbo, so the back pressure probably was not helping. But these 625s, I don't know if they would have held it down, but we're gonna take it easy on the tune a little. We're also upgrading the turbo anyway, so that should help with not having to run such high boost pressure to make the power that I want. I want to stay around 500 wheel on this one. I do not want to go too crazy with this build. I just want a nice solid daily driver. So yeah, so we'll see. 625 studs going to be going in. Still going to use the OEM head gaskets. Those should be enough to hold down the head for the power level I'm at. And yeah, just wanted to do a little close-up side by side. They look pretty much identical, like exterior wise, but the material is just different. But yeah, same 11 millimeter, nothing larger. This is a 2000 nut and washer off of my set. The new ones look exactly the same, so I don't think there's any difference in that. But they do have a higher clamping force when you torque them down. The 2000s are torqued to 90 foot-pounds. The 625s are 100 foot-pounds. Alright, so we got the 625 studs in. Got the new OEM head gaskets. Ready to start putting the head back on. And I always like to check. Obviously, I spun them all down by hand. They didn't have any real tension on them at all. But I always like to give it a good view. If you have a straight edge, you can put it across them. But basically, just make sure that they're all the same height. Because I've seen where they don't seat all the way down, and you go to put the head down, one of them sticking up further than the other. So just make sure that the bores are clean and everything. I spray brake clean and blow air through them, clean out any kind of fluids or anything inside there, and then thread these in by hand. Obviously, I have a 3/16 Allen on the top if you need a little assistance threading them in, but they should not be super tight. So finger tight, should be able to drop them all the way down. Worst case, a little bit of use the Allen keys. I'll use these Allen keys here, just this stuff. You shouldn't have to really torque on them too hard. So got all these in, head gasket down. Time to swap the head back on there and go through the torque sequence. So one thing I wanted to talk about was the ARP head studs. So when you put these washers in, they specifically say make sure the head where the stud is completely dry, no oil or any kind of lubricant that can make it slide across it. They want the washer to actually grab the head and not move. And you want the ARP lube on the threads. You can do on the top of the washer and on the bottom of the nut to actually get it for the nut to spin on this and kind of act like a bearing. You do not want this washer moving. I've had scenarios where the washer, I couldn't get it to torque to spec, and the washer was actually spinning, and what it was trying to do was it was actually trying to yank the threads out of the block. So I've been in that scenario. A quick fix for that, what I come to find out, was just take some sandpaper, some fairly rough sandpaper. I think I used like, I don't know, some like 60 or 80 grit, and just take the washer and just slide it along the paper back and forth, and it'll roughen up the bottom, and that'll help grab the head so that it can't spin anymore. Once I did that, not very hard, just, you know, a couple seconds on there. As soon as I did that, it torqued down no problem. It wasn't pulling the threads out or anything like that. So to save yourself the trouble of actually stripping out the block, pay attention to that. Do not put any lube on the bottom of the washer. It specifically states only on the top of the washer, the threads, and the bottom of the nut, so that they can slide on this, and this, they want this to grab the cylinder head and not spin. So just be cautious of that when you're putting ARP head studs, regardless of which ones you get. It'll save you a lot of trouble and not ruin a very expensive motor. So just wanted to give that tip. All right, so as you can see, we got the ARP studs in, got the nuts and washers all ARP lubed up. We're going to do this in 3 stages per ARP's instructions. So the ARP 2000s, it's 30, 60, 90 for the torque sequence. For these 625s, it's 35, 70, 100. So we're doing this torque sequence, which is pretty much exactly the same as OEM Subaru, top down, and then we're going to jump to the side, other side, back over here, back over there. We're going to do it in 3 steps. I like to do the first step 2 times just to make sure we get a nice even seat, but normally it's pretty much spot on each time, but I just do that as a precaution. And even on the last step, the 100, I might just double up and do 100 back around again and make sure that they're actually all to the same torque sequence. And when we're doing this, like I said about the washers, the heads were all dry underneath the washer. You want to make sure when you're tightening it, if something feels weird, back it off, double check everything, because like I said, it'll start pulling the threads out. I've had that scenario happen. It's not fun, but right there in bold it says remove all the oil, cylinder head washer mating surfaces must be free of oil grease. So failure to keep the surfaces dry may result in inconsistent preloads, which, like I said, it definitely felt weird when I did it. And I'm glad that I ended up double checking, because I was, you know, trying to finalize the motor, and last thing you want to do is just disregard something that you know is not right and ruin a perfectly good block. So, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and torque these down and we'll start working on that second head. Okay, so wanted to show you exactly what I was talking about. I got 2 of them. I got this one and this one right here are actually starting to spin. After the 70 foot-pounds, they started to spin the washer. And it feels very springy, so you should be able to note that when you're tightening them. If you feel that it just doesn't feel right. These other ones are very solid click to the torque sequence. So I'm going to pop these nuts back off. I'm going to sand the washer down on the bottom face and reinstall them and try torquing them and see if how it feels afterwards. So yeah, just be cautious on that. All right, so like I said, this ARP stud or bolt was spinning with the nut. So in order to address that, like I said, we wanted to, it's so smooth and the bottom of the head, I'll clean it again. But what I've done on before, which I just have this 80 grit, just spin it on here a couple times, just move it back and forth, round and around. You just want to create some little ridges in there so that it essentially bites the head and it won't be able to spin on the head. You do that a little. So like I said, we're just gonna push down on it, go around a couple times, nothing too crazy. And you'll start to see little cross hatches and whatnot. I don't know if it's going to show up in the camera, but you can see the shininess in there in the camera. There we go. So you see the cross hatches, that's going to help bite the head to make sure that this bottom part doesn't spin. But when you put it back on, make sure that part goes down, and you can have the lube on the top. But this is a little trick to get the bolts to bite and not actually start to try to pull the threads out of the head. So I already got one of them. I already did it on this side. Got that one torqued down. Totally different feel. You can see actually there is some oil and whatnot. Since these heads obviously were on the motor, I didn't get them all cleaned. We're going to go ahead and clean it up again. Drop this new washer back down and retorque it. Alright, and just like that, we got all 6 bolts torqued down, 100 foot-pounds. I went over it a couple times. Nice and solid, no springiness to the torquing. So just be cautious of that. Alright, one thing, let's see, we got the cams, carriers, everything's torqued down. Everything's good to go. Make sure you've silicone, obviously, this carrier portion. One thing is people get a little crazy with the silicone, so just make sure you got a little squish out. That's what you want all the way around. See, the ultra gray is what I use it on so many motors, but that's what you want. You just want that little squish all the way around. That gives you a really good seal without being excessive, that it's actually like going into your engine, your crankcase getting sucked up in the oil pickup. Same thing with putting the valve covers on. People silicone every portion of it. You don't need to do that. It's just excessive and has the potential of even having more debris fall into the oil pickup. Plug the strainer, that's the last thing you need. All you're going to want to do is put a little silicone right here on the corners, right there and right there. Obviously this motor doesn't have the half moons in the back, so just dab of silicone there and there, and you shouldn't have to touch silicone anywhere else on there. Your gasket's going to seal it up. And all the Subaru bolts obviously cannot be over torqued. All you're going to end up doing is just stripping the actual threads. So I believe they're about like 8 foot-pounds or something like that. You get used to it just doing it hand tight. But if you want to look up the torque spec, I think it's somewhere around 8. I usually do like 8 to 10. Yeah, so we're gonna close this head up and jump on the other head. All right, we got both heads on, valve covers on, they're all sealed up. Everything's ready long block wise. We're going to go ahead and start assembling all the timing components back together, and then we'll throw the turbo, the headers, exhaust pipe, and the turbo setup, and trying to get this thing completed into a ready to drop in long block. So ready, we're going to go ahead and get started. got the timing components all done. Timing, everything's torqued, closed up. So we're ready to start dropping the, we'll go with the turbo setup. Put the headers back on, the up pipe, and swap out the other turbo. Get it ready to go. But making progress, making progress. We're almost ready. All right, so I pretty much jumped all the way in. I was just been working, getting in the mode, so I didn't really film putting the manifold or anything back on, but the motor is all together. Crankcase, hoses, everything. We've got the new Blouch 3.5 XTR turbo. Yeah, ARP 625 studs. We've got the 3-inch inlet, parent inlet now. Yeah, equal length headers. So we're ready to rock and roll. So that's going to be it for this weekend. And next weekend should be in the car and running. So till next time.